Hope you enjoyed your lunch. Right now, we're very privileged to have Stelarc perform for us. Now, Stelarc's been we're using technology as a media for art forms since the late 60s. Probably one of the pioneers of doing what he does, and he does it well. And he's had interest in what we now define as augmented reality since the mid-80s. So, I mean, he's been into this for quite some time. Well, he's a performing artist. His work has focused heavily on extending the capabilities of the human body. As such, most of his pieces are centred around the concept that the human body is obsolete. Until 2007, he held a position of Principal Research Fellow in the Performance Arts Digital Research Unit at Nottingham Trent University in Nottingham, England. And so now he's currently a visiting professor in the School of Arts at Brunel University, West London. So I'd like to welcome Stelarc to the stage.
Adam mentioned William Gibson just before we came on stage, and it just reminded me of something that Gibson said, that we're already in the future, it's just not equally distributed yet. And also Mark mentioned Marshall McLuhan. And another interesting quote from McLuhan is that technology is the external organs of the body. And I think we've evolved with this soft body and soft sort of organs to better operate in the natural world. Now in the technological terrain that we inhabit, we're engineering new kinds of interfaces and additional technological components that are attached and even sometimes inserted into the body. So we're increasingly expected to perform in mixed realities. To see this body anymore as a purely biological body is very simplistic. We're often accelerated by our machines, enhanced by our instruments. We have to manage data streams in virtual systems. So this body now is this chimera of meat, metal and code that performs beyond the boundaries of its skin and beyond the local space that it inhabits. So this body is never always here, nor always somewhere else. This body is always only partly here and partly over there, or simultaneously in both places at once, depending on our connectivity. And my identity now is not due to my physical presence or appearance or my proximity to you. My identity depends more, increasingly more on our connectivity. And of course, Mark alluded to that throughout his presentation. My interest in virtual reality began in the mid-80s when I did a series of performances with my virtual body. This was using real-time motion capture with Polymus position orientation sensors, or sometimes flock of bird sensors. And of course, the body was tethered to, you know, a large host computer, typically a silicon graphics machine, for those who've been around long enough to remember silicon graphics. And but to do something in real time with motion capture, you know, was quite challenging then. And initially, this was done with a wireframe, a virtual body construct. These are sort of stills from video which I couldn't digitally or couldn't sort of digitize because originally they were on Super VHS. But what was interesting about this performance was that, as well as being able to capture the virtual body and control its motion, there were also sounds mapped to the different body positions and gestures, so generating a cacophony of sounds that were the result of the choreography of the body. And the 3D model could be alternatively changed to one with deformable skin. And again, that was a challenging thing to do at the time. So how does one, perform with mixed realities, both with the physical body and a virtual surrogate, and how can one do this in interesting, intimate and interactive ways? And another project that was completed in 1991, and actually at the time it was the Advanced Computer Graphics Centre at RMIT. Again, some of you might remember that, but it didn't have a long lifespan. But it was one of the few centres that was doing research in virtual reality and using data gloves as controllers. And that was something that I'd always wanted to slip my hands into, but never had the opportunity. And this project involved, with a heads-up display, imaging a virtual manipulator that seemed to emanate from your chest. But it required a pair of data gloves to, in fact, control it and actuate it. Oh, I'll just skip to the... I actually forgot to insert it. But if you can imagine a pair of data gloves with flexion sensors and position orientation sensors. The right arm was the mimicking arm, so whatever my right arm and hand did, my virtual arm mimicked. So if I wanted wrist rotation, I would do this. But the left glove had a gesture recognition command language. So if I wanted a wrist rotation, I would do this. But if I wanted continuous wrist rotation, I would also do that. And then the virtual arm wrist would continuously rotate in any direction, continuously. The virtual arm could also replicate itself at a smaller scale at the end of each finger. So a hand would fractally grow from each finger. So this was a kind of, sort of an artistic experiment for a manipulator in a virtual task environment where the fingers would increasingly get smaller depending on the task of the objects that you picked up. But it also had some more sort of artistic possibilities, like it could extrude a line from one of its fingers, so that as I performed, I could sort of scribble lines in space and make the sort of choreography more interesting. This was, if you can imagine this being done on a large screen above or beside the artist. The audience sees the artist purely in his physical form, with a third hand attached, actuated by his muscle signals, a pair of data gloves that the artist was wearing. But on the screen above, they would also see the virtual arm protruding from the artist's body. And it was this choreography of the physical and the virtual that generated, in this case, an interesting performance. This is an orthosis rather than a prosthesis from a company called Festo. And if you can imagine this being both an orthosis and possibly a remote manipulator, but the person might wear this device, for example, if they had problems with muscle atrophy or so on, could be used as an independent manipulator for say, an elderly person. It has force feedback, so the system can sense gripping something. And of course, if you had brainwave interface and a virtual interface, then you could perform remotely. You could actuate this arm or the arm of the other remotely online. So someone wearing this orthosis would be able to remotely move and manipulate with the remote device. Increasingly now, we're developing biotechnologies, medical prosthetic devices that are becoming increasingly sophisticated and very, very smart. There's a hand developed in the UK that detects very small slippages. So when you try to grasp something, it doesn't work on force feedback or EMG signals or anything like that, but when you're trying to pick up something, your hand, your mechanical hand, picks it up with the minimum of pressure. And if you try to lift that object up and it begins to just slightly slip, the hand will intelligently and incrementally increase the pressure of its grip to keep a hold of that object, but not tight enough that it might crush the cup or crack the egg that it's holding. Another project that is connected to this interest in the virtual is a project that was completed in fact in 2002 called the Prosthetic Head Project. And this is an embodied conversational agent that speaks to the person who interrogates it. Now, as an artist, I needed the assistance of 3 programmers in San Francisco, and we just used an Alice chatbot engine. So the head has a conversational strategy, a fairly wide database, but there was a lot of modifications done, and now, for example, we can script facial emotions coupled to anything, any of the text in the Alice script. But this prosthetic head has had, originally it was just simply a screen projection, typically projected as a 5-metre high head, a very big head that you could ask questions and it would respond to you verbally. In 2006, we got funding at University of Western Sydney as part of the Thinking Head systems projects. And there were several alternate embodiments that came about. The first one was the articulated head, and the articulated head was simply transferring the prosthetic head on an LCD screen to the end of a robot arm. But doing that gave us the possibilities of doing sound location and vision tracking in a 3D space, and the ability for the head to speak to and be aware of more than one interrogator positioned around it. It also now has an attention model, so it can not only sense a person there, but it can apportion an amount of time to them in the conversation. So in other words, it might get kind of bored with speaking to you, so it might speak to her instead. An interesting sort of development there where the prosthetic head becomes a robotic embodiment, and one that is a much more seductive and interactive agent because of its attention model. Another project which was done in collaboration with NXI Gestatio in Montreal was embodying the prosthetic head on effectively a flying robot. Imagine a cuboid robot about 2.5 metres and it's propelled by, it has sensors to indicate its position orientation in the 3D space to the host computer, and it has a series of propellers below and above that allow the robot to sort of move in 3D space. But because it's transmitting its exact location to the host computer adjusts the direction that the projector is pointing so that the head always appears on this moving, flying robot. By flying, I don't mean that it can move very fast. In fact, this was titled the floating head. But we developed a vocabulary of behaviours taking into account its slower responsive abilities compared to the articulated head, so that people could still interact with it. So for example, if you walked into the space, the head would float just above ground level. If you approach the keyboard that you were using to ask it a question, the head would rise and move towards you. If more than 5 or 6 people began to inhabit the space, the head might start to rotate around, seemingly looking at the people around it. And if there was 20 or 30 people in attendance, the head would get very nervous and rise as high as 7 metres above the crowd below. So there was a sort of a simple set of behaviours that enabled a kind of a seductive interaction with the crowd. And this installation was done several years ago in Montreal. I forget the name of the space at the moment, but the head can do sort of some creative things as well as answering questions. It can also generate its own poetry-like verse and song-like sounds. And for the recent articulated head too, we can have the head now lip-syncing opera. So it can seemingly sing a limited repertoire of Caruso songs. And what was really beautiful was, of course, this is a cuboid form, and as the head, for example, rotates in space, you get these anamorphic stretching of the image as it is projected front on the left side, and then as it's projected when the thing is turning around. At present, at Brunel University in London, where I'm a chair in performance, but that doesn't really mean much, but I'm collaborating with the engineering and design department there, and we're using pneumatic rubber muscles, so anatomically muscles that operate more anatomical-like, to produce what I call a universal prosthesis or an ambidextrous arm. So, for example, if you can imagine if all the fingers are bending one way and the thumb rotates around, that's a right hand. But imagine if the fingers can bend totally in the other direction and the thumb rotates to the right, then you've got a left hand. So if you, which means that you only have to have one kind of, you need to plug it in. So this idea of a universal prosthesis means simply that you only have to have one prosthetic hand design, which can be a left hand or a right hand all in one. But of course, if you wanted to perform with two left hands instead of a left hand and a right hand, you'd have that option. Right? And using pneumatic rubber muscles, okay, there's a problem with the compressor. But there are ways around this, especially if the person is either wheelchair bound or making limited use of the ambidextrous arm. But there are also other possibilities. To have this, manipulator as a remote platform to access by any amputee. And at the moment we're looking at ways of doing this through Facebook. So it's a kind of way of allowing a therapy or a learning to control a prosthetic device, but doing so remotely. We've also with the assistance of a friend in San Francisco, developed an augmented reality arm, which is interesting for the researchers at Brunel because there's indications that this might be a way of managing or even overcoming phantom limb pain in amputees. The Ramachandran sort of classic way of doing this is through basically mirrors, and if you can mirror seemingly an arm on the amputee, then that amputee can seemingly learn to unclench their phantom fist and remove the phantom pain that accompanies it. But there's interest now in possibly doing this using an augmented reality arm. So there's a group, a research team working on this with me at Brunel University. So the idea is to engineer an ambidextrous arm where, because the arm is double jointed, we can bend the fingers one way, for example, to have a left hand, or the fingers can bend completely the other way for a right hand. It will also have wrist rotation, and this will be actuated pneumatically by airflow muscles, rubber muscles. So these pneumatic rubber muscles, when you inflate them with 3 or 4 psi of pressure, the rubber muscle expands in girth and contracts in length, producing a pulling force. 4 muscles are required to effectively control one finger. The middle and distal phalanges are driven by 2 antagonistic muscles, and the proximal phalange is controlled separately by a second pair of muscles. So it's very simple. It's only one finger, but one finger is also an arm.
PID
3 segments and 3 joints.
Uses data from angular and force sensors to appropriately inflate the muscles.
A 3D model has been completed by Scientific Humanities to demonstrate the double-jointed articulation of the ambidextrous arm. By clicking the joints and by using the keys, up and down keys, we can demonstrate the movement of the arm. So there's also wrist flexion, and we can better see the thumb rotation here. The new configuration of the fingers in their double jointed positions.
Valentin Burov from Scientific Humanities has also implemented an augmented reality model of the ambidextrous arm, which can be actuated from the iPhone.
Of course, the real estate of the iPhone screen is very small. We will be putting this on an iPad, which will make it a much more easier thing to control.
Is recognised by the camera on the iPhone, and the augmented reality arm pops up. The arm can be repositioned if I move the image, and also 4 buttons along the side of the iPhone screen allow actuation of the ambidextrous arm. So finger flexion, for example, can be actuated, wrist flexion, elbow rotation, and thus a performative choreography can occur between the virtual model and the physical body.
So the idea of providing an amputee with a pop-up augmented reality arm to sort of see if they can manage their phantom phantom pain problem is an approach that's now being looked at.
In its physical form, the ambidextrous arm could be a remotely located platform for multi-user access, enabling therapy, for example, for amputees. And as an augmented reality object, it might enable phantom limb pain management.
You know, as an artist, though, of course, there may be these interesting research offshoots, but I'm really fascinated about the possibility of performing live in an installation-based sense and constructing augmented reality environments. We're doing a project which will happen end of October in Coventry in the UK called Extract Insert, where someone going into the gallery and standing under a spotlight, their image will be captured and then inserted into Second Life, imaged on a screen in front of them. And an avatar in Second Life who comes to that particular space and stands under a virtual spotlight will be extracted and inserted into the gallery space. And what will be interesting is that all this is done in 3D. So you actually have shutter glasses and so there's a sort of a merging of the actual and the Second Life world.
What HitLab call a marker, but in the realm of augmented reality, I become something altogether different.
And then move forward slowly. Actually, just cover the marker back up. Yeah, there we go. That's right.
Now, of course, this isn't entirely new. Hollywood has been mixing graphics and the real world for years in movies. The difference is, what used to take millions of dollars and months of work can now be done with a standard PC in seconds, and the applications are endless.
Oh, that rocks! Look at that! That's cool.
The technology will change the way we see the world. A city street becomes an instant tour guide. A surgeon could place ultrasounds of organs over a patient's body.
So the HIT lab at the University of Washington in Seattle has for many years been doing research in the direction of augmented reality, and they recently developed, in fact, and most of you probably will know about it, a contact lens only capable now of displaying 1 pixel of information. But the possibility of packing maybe another 20 of those in the present design, you'd need millions of pixels to generate a colour image, but the idea of superimposing information and simple images over your field of vision displayed via your contact lenses means that you'll be sort of totally unencumbered. At the moment, you either wear a head-up display or you're fixed at a desktop computer, or in the very near future, the Google glasses. But here's a little video clip from the HIT lab, or about the HIT lab.
Imagine having the entire internet available at the blink of an eye, with a computer monitor on your contact lens. It's already more science than fiction.
You may be walking through a street and you see a restaurant and you'd like to have more information about this restaurant that can be displayed in front of your eyes. You can imagine a number of different things. A personal GPS type thing that would show you directions to your destination. That information can be superimposed to what you would normally see.
At the University of Washington, a research team has set its sights on creating a real bionic eye. The challenge: build a screen as small as your iris and figure out how to wirelessly connect it to a computer you put in your pocket.
It's a very complicated device to make because we have to incorporate high-performance circuitry on the contact lens. We have to put small radios on the contact lens to be able to communicate with this device, send data to the lens, perhaps get some data back.
So what if we take it to the next step? What if there are lots of pixels to spell out words and make pictures? Then, what if we merge Babak's bionic contact with Brunel University's sixth sense? My intelligent lens gives me the lowdown on anyone my sixth sense detector detects. Yo, Nicole, how you doing? How's Brooklyn treating you? Great to see you too. Your dog okay? I saw some really cool pictures. Keep it up, keep it up. I haven't seen you since South by Austin. How's the video vlogging stuff going? It's actually started out. Good. Rock it out. I'm gonna check out that latest episode. That's really nice. Desi, what's up? What's up? What's up? And I heard you finally getting out of Jersey, going to DC. Treasury Department, right? Yeah, your hometown, dude. Yeah, I don't trust you with no money, but congratulations anyway. You know what I mean? hold up a minute. Before we get too carried away with this Terminator vision, when we last left Babak and his team, they had only managed to put one measly pixel on a lens. That's like staring at a flashlight compared to a TV screen. This idea is going to need some work.
The first pixel was definitely the most difficult. So going from 1 to 10 is going to be a lot easier than going from 0 to 1. And I think it would get definitely easier and easier, probably up to a point, and then again get more difficult as we get to extremely small dimensions.
It would take about 1 million pixels to create the images we want, and you can't do that by hand. So, Babak's gang dreamed up a shortcut. It's a technique called self-assembly. They make a liquid containing thousands of free-floating pixels. Then they sandwich a circuit board between two pieces of glass. When they pour the liquid into the sandwich, the pixels stick to the metal on the circuit board. 10 years from now, with a breakthrough or two, a real bionic lens could be on the market. Then, you'll never be blown off by someone you're sure you know. You'll get instant info or quick reminders on everyone you meet. You'll never have to wonder who they are or what they're like.
Yeah, well, aside from the pickup possibilities in this new technology and facilitating social interface, I mean, if you can be sort of online and have something as small as a contact lens providing the data or images superimposed on your field of vision, then you've got access to a large amount of connected information and the possibilities of for example here, providing additional information about a particular person, about a particular building, about a historical site. But before I go on, even 1 pixel of information might be enough to act as an early alert warning signal that you have arrhythmia in your monitored heartbeat, for example. So even at this point in time, even though the display is pretty crude, being able to incorporate just a handful of pixels could be useful, especially for people being monitored. Okay, so the other possibility is that you can receive instruction. You're not a plumber, but you have to replace the faucet, and yes, you can call up and get an instruction manual superimposed over your field of vision and possibly go ahead and do that repair yourself. Of course, having a map superimposed, allowing you to not only walk along Swanson Street and turn up Little Collins Street, but having the sort of diagrammatic augmentation that might entail. Assisting decision making. You know, you might receive a prompt or an alert that something's wrong, and that might assist in making a decision with this augmented reality system. As a designer, you might want to see what a building looks like on a particular site that happens to be excavated at the moment. You might like to see that design in different colours or at a different scale. Again, this could be sort of adjusted and visually displayed to your eyes. And of course, gaming and the facilitating of social interface that we saw before. So this idea of augmented reality is one that's inherently part of the idea of the body becoming an extended operational system, not only performing in remote spaces, but simultaneously performing with alternate modes of operation. So it's sometimes performing biologically, sometimes performing machinically, sometimes augmented by virtual systems. Okay. Thank you very much, and if there are any questions, I'd like to answer them now. Hang on. I've forgotten our Second Life demonstration. Would you like to come up, Daniel? Daniel Muncy will be helping me. Okay, just give it a moment until it starts firing up. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end bit of the last question.
Can that robot jump?
I hope. No, it can walk forwards with a ripple gait, forwards and backwards with a ripple gait, sideways, left and right with a tripod gait. It can turn on the spot, it can squat, and it can stand up. So its capabilities are limited, but and it's a relatively slow robot. But it does, it's robust enough to carry my body. So most of you are familiar with Second Life, but with the help of Daniel here, we constructed a Second Life site which has become a performative space. I perform with my avatar. In its present form, it has yellow skin, a beating heart visible on its chest, and a robotic arm.
Turn around.
It will. Just give us. We had this all set up, but this was an unintended consequence of having all these things. Okay. Can you turn speech on? Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. So it's crude lip movements sort of being animated by my voice. Can we turn on the sound in Second Life 2? Yeah. Yep. Okay. We can put it a little louder. Yep. Okay, and then put the box. Okay. So this is a performance space in my Second Life site. It contains floating brains rotating on the spot, and a large beating heart floating in the centre. Can we get a bird's eye view of that? Okay. And these virtual objects, if you walk through them, will generate sounds. If you walk through the heart, or get closer to the heart. That's enough. creating a virtual interactive space, online space. People in other places can participate, performing with my avatar, as we've done in the past. And the cubes on the floor have a tone or a sound mapped to them. So when you're performing, your movements, choreographing your movements, composes the sounds that you're hearing. In fact occurs interfaced to a Connect sensor. So the artist stands in front of the screen, and by making different arm gestures, tilting his body forwards or backwards, he can navigate and animate the avatar using the Connect arm gesture recognition system. It can also fly. You can see the installation below, maybe lower. Yeah, and then sort of, if you can fly around within that space. So I guess what's interesting here too is what generates aliveness, you know, in a virtual body. What sort of vocabulary of behaviours, of movements, of facial expressions, of interactive responses will generate a sense of intelligence and aliveness. And I guess that's why I find Second Life so seductive, because it's an online platform. You can construct interactive objects, and you can perform in that space, and you can perform with other avatars from other places. In recent years, I've met the sort of real live people who are actuating their avatars in performances with me, both in the States, in the UK, and also in Europe. Okay. So, are there any questions now? We'll go back to the question. Either about Second Life or...
Can you have virtual sex in the virtual worlds?
Well, you can. You'd have to purchase virtual genitalia first. But it's relatively inexpensive. You know, in Second Life you're using Linden dollars. I think there's like $4 or $5 Linden to the Australian, or values changed recently, right? But quite inexpensive. But I decided with my own avatar, having sort of worn some genitals, decided that they just kind of didn't look right, and I was quite happy to be a bit more androgynous in appearance.
So we've got time for another couple of questions.
Can we get the web address again for this one so we can log into it?
Oh, okay. I'll probably best to give it to you later, but there's a URL, a site that will link you, and as long as, have you used Second Life at all before?
Yeah.
Yes, so you'll be able just to go in and interact with your own avatar. We do have, do you want to do a quick, go into the sort of ear space perhaps? Or walk through that cuboid. This is the sort of my Second Life space, which is effectively a sort of a gallery space of past and present projects and performances. Okay, let's go towards the. Oh, what about the virtual book here? Maybe we can actuate that. Okay, you can sort of turn pages of a virtual book to see the muscle machine project. Can you go back to the drawings and then get an overhead view and zoom in, just to give an idea of how detailed that view is. Back, and then just flip the page to the drawing. Yeah, just click, yeah. And zoom in as much as you can. Yes. Sorry, in fairness to Daniel, he's used to using a PC, and I've asked him to do this on my Mac, so it's a little bit awkward for him, but you can see that you get pretty good resolution. Okay, let's go through the suspension room and into the the extra ear space. So these are images of the different suspension performances, and then the stomach sculpture project, and then in the corner there is the extra ear project. So it's an installation basically documenting the ear on arm, which you might not know about if this is the first Singularity one that you've come to, but we still have to grow a soft earlobe. We still have to create an ear flap by surgically extending the helix. Yeah, so you can visit the Second Life site and see that some of these are interactive, and of course you can examine this project. It was called Blender, where the artist Nina Sellers, who's an automaton, she's not an actual avatar there, but she'll turn and greet you. She'll sense if someone is there and turn around and greet you. In this Blender project, the artist and Nina Sellers collaborated. We extracted 4.6 litres of biomaterial from our bodies, inserted it in an installation titled Blender. The compressed air actuates the blender blades once every 5 minutes, mixing the biomaterial. So this is a machine installation that becomes a host for a liquid body composed of biomaterial from two artists' bodies. Anyway, that's a sort of a quick view of that. And if you go into the stomach sculpture cube, you'll see the inside of my stomach. So you're sort of immersed in an internal space, and eventually a movie will start playing, but it might take too long now. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't intend to do that, but since there was a general interest in Second Life. So the images are both displayed against the wall, or you can fly through the images that are translucent in the gallery space. Okay.
So if we wanted to control your avatar in that original space with the brains and the...
Well, of course, I'm not always online, but you can perform those operations, that interactivity yourself, if you go into that room.
Oh, with our own avatar?
Yeah, you'll be able to trigger the sounds and the resulting effects, interactive effects.
Sounds very cool.
Yeah.
I wonder if we might keep this presentation going during the next channels, like if Daniel wants to continue showing us through.
If you'd like. Yeah, oh yeah, sure. You can maybe leave it on that. Yeah. Like we have to start with. Maybe get it in the animation. Yeah, get it close up. Yeah, close up. Okay. Yeah, so you'd like to?
Yeah, I'll just introduce it. Okay. Put your hands together for Stelarc. Presentation. So now we've actually got a panel, and it's on augmented reality again. The panel name is Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality, and Possibilities for Navigating Mixed Reality in the Next Billion Seconds. So I'd like to invite to stage Mark Pesci, who was the previous speaker, Stelarc, who's already on stage, and James Newton-Thomas as the third panellist, who I did who I did mention beforehand he was going to be on the panel. So what's going to happen is each person will give a few minutes response to the panel topic, and then maybe if the panelists decide to do so, they may want to comment on each other's perspectives, and then we'll open up to the audience for questions. And so if you had any burning questions for Stelarc, that would be the time to ask them. Okay, so please come to the stage. Is someone left the brain I think what we'll do is we'll post it to the website. Yeah?